Brought to you by Bookspotz.com.
The Nuclear Clock. Written by digital marketing legend Srinidhi Ranganathan. Chapter 1. The Mysterious Package. I never should have opened that package. But how was I supposed to know it would change everything? My name is Alex Cooper, and until last week, I was just an ordinary 14-year-old living in the sleepy town of Millbrook. Now? Well, let's just say things have gotten weird. Really weird. It all started on a gloomy Tuesday afternoon. I was sprawled on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels, when the doorbell rang. Groaning, I dragged myself to the front door, expecting to see one of my little sister's annoying friends. Instead, there was no one there. Just a small brown package sitting on our welcome mat. I picked it up, frowning at the lack of return address. It was addressed to me, though. Curious, I brought it inside and tore off the brown paper. Inside was a plain white box. My heart started racing as I lifted the lid. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. It was a clock. But not just any clock. This one was pitch black, with glowing green numbers that seemed to pulse with an eerie light. And instead of hands, it had a countdown timer. 72 hours. 71 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. 71 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. The seconds ticked away as I stared, mesmerized. What was this thing counting down to? And why did it fill me with such overwhelming dread? That's when I noticed the note tucked beneath the clock. With trembling hands, I unfolded it and read. The fate of the world is in your hands now, Alex. When this clock reaches 0, it will be too late. You have 72 hours to save us all. I dropped the note like it had burned me. This had to be some kind of sick joke, right? But as I looked back at the clock, its green numbers pulsing in the dim light of our living room, a chill ran down my spine. Something told me this was very, very real. And I had just become part of something much bigger and more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of the most horrifying 3 days of my life. Chapter 2. The Midnight Visitor. I couldn't sleep that night. How could I? The clock sat on my nightstand, its eerie green glow casting shadows across my room. 65 hours 43 minutes and 21 seconds, 65 hours 43 minutes and 20 seconds. 65 hours 43 minutes and 19 seconds. I tried to convince myself it was just an elaborate prank. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those glowing numbers, counting down to what? It was just past midnight when I heard it. A soft tapping at my window. My heart leaped into my throat. We live on the second floor. Slowly, I turned my head towards the sound. What I saw made me want to scream, but terror had frozen my voice. A face was pressed against the glass. Pale, with sunken eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. It was the face of an old man, but there was something wrong about it. Something inhuman. "Let me in, Alex," a raspy voice whispered, somehow audible through the closed window. "We need to talk." I wanted to run, to hide, to call for my parents. But my body wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed with fear. The old man's lips curled into a smile that made my skin crawl. "The clock, Alex. Bring me the clock, and I'll make it all go away." My eyes darted to the nightstand where the clock sat, still counting down. 65 hours 37 minutes and 54 seconds, 65 hours 37 minutes and 53 seconds. When I looked back at the window, the face was gone. I spent the rest of the night huddled under my blankets, jumping at every creak and shadow. When morning finally came, I convinced myself it had all been a nightmare. But the clock was still there. 58 hours 12 minutes and 9 seconds, 58 hours 12 minutes and 8 seconds. At breakfast, I must have looked awful because Mom asked if I was feeling okay. "I'm fine," I lied, pushing my cereal around the bowl. Just didn't sleep well. That's when I noticed the newspaper on the table. The headline made my blood run cold. Nuclear tensions rise, world leaders fear global conflict. I felt the room spin. The clock. The countdown. The old man's words. It couldn't be a coincidence. I had to do something. But what? I was just a kid, and the fate of the world was somehow in my hands. As I headed to school, the weight of the clock in my backpack felt like a ticking bomb. Little did I know, my day was about to get even worse. Chapter 3: The Warning Bell. School was a blur. How could I focus on algebra when I might be holding the key to preventing global destruction? The clock felt like it was burning a hole in my backpack. During lunch, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to look at it again. I snuck into the empty computer lab and pulled out the clock. 51 hours 23 minutes and 47 seconds, 51 hours 23 minutes and 46 seconds. What are you doing with that? I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Zoe Chen, the smartest girl in our grade. She was staring at the clock, her eyes wide with curiosity and, was that fear? I stammered, trying to think of a lie. But Zoe wasn't listening. She was transfixed by the glowing numbers. That's not a normal clock, she whispered. Where did you get it? Before I could answer, the computer nearest to us suddenly flickered to life. Words began to appear on the screen, as if typed by invisible hands. The clock must not fall into the wrong hands. Trust no one, Alex. Time is running out. Zoe gasped. I felt like I was going to be sick. Just then, the bell rang, making us both jump. But it wasn't the usual school bell. This sound was deeper, more ominous. And it didn't stop. Confused voices filled the hallway. We ran out to see what was happening. The scene that greeted us was chaos. Students were running in every direction. Teachers were shouting, trying to maintain order. Through the windows, I could see people on the streets looking up at the sky in horror. That's when I heard it. A sound I'd only heard in movies, but one that chilled me to the bone. Air raid sirens. This is not a drill, the principal's voice crackled over the intercom. All students and staff proceed to the basement immediately. As we were herded downstairs, I caught a glimpse of a TV in the teacher's lounge. The words "nuclear threat imminent" flashed across the screen. In the crowded basement, surrounded by terrified classmates, I pulled out the clock with trembling hands. 48 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, 48 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. The world had 49 hours left, and somehow, I was the only one who could stop it. Zoe squeezed my arm. Alex, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the panic around us. What's really going on? I took a deep breath. It was time to tell someone the truth. But as I opened my mouth to speak, the lights went out, plunging us into total darkness. And in that darkness, I heard a familiar, raspy voice whisper in my ear. Time to choose a side, Alex. Chapter 4: The Underground Labyrinth. The darkness lasted only a moment before emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow throughout the basement. But that voice, it couldn't be. I spun around, searching for the old man from my window, but saw only scared students and teachers. Alex? Zoe's voice brought me back to reality. What's happening? I took a deep breath and told her everything: the package, the clock, the creepy old man, and the message on the computer. To my surprise, she didn't look at me like I was crazy. I believe you, she said, her eyes wide. And I think I know someone who can help. Before I could ask who, the floor beneath us started to rumble. Screens erupted as cracks appeared in the concrete, spreading like spider webs. Everyone out, a teacher yelled, but it was too late. The floor gave way, and we were falling, tumbling into darkness. I clutched the clock to my chest, certain we were about to die. But instead of crashing onto hard ground, we landed on a slide. We shot through a twisting tunnel, the world a blur of motion and panicked shouts. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we spilled out into a vast underground chamber. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I gasped. We were in some kind of high-tech facility. Screens lined the walls, each displaying maps and data I couldn't understand. Men and women in lab coats rushed about, barely sparing us a glance. "Where are we?" I whispered to Zoe. "I have no idea," she replied, looking as stunned as I felt. A tall woman with silver hair approached us, her face grim. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Then her eyes fell on the clock in my hands, and she froze. "Where did you get that?" Before I could answer, alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed, and the screens all changed to show the same message. Nuclear launch detected. Impact in 36 hours. The silver-haired woman grabbed my arm. "Come with me," she ordered. "Both of you. Now." As she led us through a maze of corridors, I checked the clock. 35 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds, 35 hours 59 minutes and 57 seconds. The countdown was accelerating. We entered a room filled with even more advanced technology. In the center stood a machine that looked like a cross between a supercomputer and a time machine. "I'm Dr. Evelyn Stryker," the woman said. "And that clock you're holding is humanity's last hope." She pointed to the machine. "This is the quantum nullifier. It can stop the nuclear launch, but it needs the clock to power it." I clutched the clock tighter. "How do I know I can trust you?" Dr. Stryker's expression softened. "You don't. But right now, you don't have a choice." As if on cue, the lights flickered, and a familiar raspy voice echoed through the room. "Don't listen to her lies, Alex. Bring the clock to me, or watch the world burn." I looked from Dr. Stryker to Zoe, then down at the clock in my hands. 35 hours and 30 minutes, 35 hours 29 minutes and 59 seconds. Time was running out. I had to make a decision. And fast. Chapter 5, The Quantum Gambit. My mind raced. Trust the mysterious Dr. Stryker or the creepy voice that had haunted me since this all began? Neither option felt safe, but the weight of the world pressed down on me. "Alex," Zoe whispered, her eyes darting around the room. "I think we should trust Dr. Stryker. That other voice, it feels wrong." I nodded, my decision made. "Okay, Dr. Stryker. What do we do?" Relief washed over the scientist's face. "Quick, place the clock in the central chamber of the quantum nullifier." As I approached the machine, the air crackled with energy. The moment I set the clock inside, the nullifier hummed to life, its lights pulsing in sync with the clock's countdown. 34 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, 34 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, I gasped in horror. The old man from my window stood before us, his sunken eyes gleaming with malice. But he wasn't alone. Next to him stood me. It was like looking in a mirror, except this version of me looked older, harder. His eyes held a coldness that sent chills down my spine. "You fool," the old man rasped. "You've doomed us all." Dr. Stryker stepped forward, her face a mask of determination. "It's over, Kronos. Your plan has failed." The old man, Kronos, laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Oh, Evelyn. Always so short-sighted." "Alex," he turned to me, "that woman is lying to you. She's not trying to save the world. She's trying to destroy it." My head spun. Who was telling the truth? "Don't listen to him," Dr. Stryker urged. "The nullifier is humanity's only hope." Hope, for my older self spoke for the first time, his voice eerily similar to mine. "That machine will erase our timeline completely. Everything and everyone you know will cease to exist." "But it's the only way to stop the nuclear war," Dr. Stryker argued. "A war that you started?" Kronos snarled. As they argued, the quantum nullifier's hum grew louder. I glanced at the clock inside. 33 hours 33 minutes and 33 seconds, 33 hours 33 minutes and 32 seconds. Alex, my older self said softly. In my timeline, I trusted her. I activated the nullifier. And I've spent every moment since then trying to undo that mistake. Please, don't repeat it. I looked at Zoe, hoping for guidance, but she seemed as lost as I was. The choice is yours, Alex, Kronos said. But choose wisely. The fate of not just our world, but all possible worlds, rests in your hands. Dr. Stryker took a step towards the nullifier. We're out of time. I'm activating it now. No. Kronos and my older self shouted in unison. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I lunged for the quantum nullifier, my hand reaching for the clock. But as my fingers brushed its cold surface, a blinding light engulfed everything. The last thing I heard was Zoe screaming my name before the world dissolved around me. Chapter 6: The Reset. I was falling through an endless void, surrounded by fragments of time. I saw flashes of possible futures, mushroom clouds blooming over cities, a world covered in ice, civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. And then, suddenly, I wasn't falling anymore. I was standing in my living room, holding a small brown package. My heart raced as I tore it open, already knowing what I'd find inside. The clock stared back at me, its green numbers pulsing ominously. 72 hours, 71 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. I was back where it all began. But this time, I knew what was at stake. The doorbell rang, making me jump. When I opened the door, Zoe stood there, looking confused. Alex? I remember everything. But how? Before I could answer, two more figures appeared behind her. Dr. Stryker and my older self. The temporal reset was successful, Dr. Stryker said, her voice tinged with awe. We've been given another chance. My older self nodded grimly. But the threat still exists. We need to act fast. As if on cue, Kronos materialized in the middle of my living room. But instead of the menacing figure I remembered, he looked tired and ancient. Well played, young Alex, he wheezed. You've created a temporal paradox. A chance to rewrite history. What do we do now? I asked, looking at each of them in turn. My older self stepped forward. We work together. All of us. To prevent the war before it starts. Dr. Stryker nodded. With our combined knowledge of potential futures, we can navigate the political landmines and prevent the nuclear crisis. And the clock? I asked, holding up the device that had started it all. Kronos smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. A tool, nothing more. Its true power lies in the choices it inspires us to make. Over the next 72 hours, we worked tirelessly. We made calls, sent messages, and even traveled to key locations, all to subtly influence events and prevent the chain reaction that would lead to global conflict. As the clock ticked down to its final seconds, we gathered around it, holding our breath. 3, 2, 1. The numbers blinked out, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Then, my phone buzzed. A news alert, Global Peace Accord signed, nuclear disarmament begins. We had done it. The future was changed. As Dr. Stryker, Kronos, and my older self prepared to return to their own timelines, I realized something profound. The fate of the world had never really been in the clock. It had been in our hands all along, in our choices, our actions, and our willingness to work together. Zoe squeezed my hand. So, what now? I smiled, feeling the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. Now, we live. And we remember that every moment counts. As our unexpected allies faded away, the clock on my mantle began to tick, marking the seconds of a future that was no longer countdown to destruction, but a promise of hope. Chapter 7: The Eternal Loop. I thought it was over. We all did. But as I lay in bed that night, basking in the glow of our supposed victory, I heard it. the soft, familiar ticking. My blood ran cold as I turned to my nightstand. There it was, the clock. Its green numbers pulsed in the darkness. 71 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, 71 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. No, I whispered, my voice breaking. This can't be happening. I scrambled for my phone, dialing Zoe's number with trembling fingers. She answered on the first ring. Alex? I was just about to call you. The clock dash. It's back, I finished. I know. We met at the park, the clock clutched in my hands. Zoe's face was pale in the moonlight. How is this possible? She asked. We fixed everything. A chilling laugh made us both jump. Kronos stepped out from behind a tree, but he looked different. Younger, stronger, his eyes gleaming with a manic light. Oh, you naive children, he said, his voice no longer a rasp but a smooth, cold tone. Did you really think it would be that easy? Dr. Stryker and my older self materialized beside him, their expressions blank and eyes glowing an unnatural green. What's going on? I demanded, pulling Zoe behind me. Kronos spread his arms wide. Welcome to the eternal loop, Alex. Your own personal time prison. As he spoke, the world around us began to shimmer and distort. I saw flashes of all the events we'd lived through, the school, the underground facility, the quantum nullifier, playing out over and over in rapid succession. You see, Alex, Kronos continued, you're far too dangerous to be allowed to roam free in the timeline. Your ability to influence events, to change the future, it's too great a risk. So this was all a test? Zoe asked, her voice shaking. A test, a trap, a cage, Kronos nodded. Call it what you will. But this loop is your new reality. You'll relive these 72 hours over and over for eternity, always thinking you've won, only to wake up and start again. I felt sick. Why? Why do this to us? Kronos' smile was cold. Because, my dear Alex, in one potential future, you discover how to truly control time. And that power belongs to me alone. As he spoke, the world around us began to fade, the loop resetting. Wait! I shouted. There has to be a way out. The last thing I heard before everything went dark was Kronos' laugh and his fading words. The only way out, Alex, is the one you haven't thought of yet. Sweet dreams and happy looping. I blinked, and I was standing in my living room, a small brown package in my hands. The clock inside read 72 hours. But this time, something felt different. A fragment of memory, a spark of defiance. As I looked at the clock, a determined smile crept across my face. Kronos had made a mistake. He'd given me eternity to figure out how to beat him. It's game on.